Welcome to Vault Studio.
This is Story Vault Studio. Vivian Sterling died once already, frozen alive on her own living room floor while the family she'd spent her whole life funding stood over her and did nothing. Then she opened her eyes again, 7 days before it all happened, with every debt, every slight, and every cent they'd ever taken from her laid out clear in her mind. This time, she wasn't going to hand over another dollar out of guilt. This time, when winter came for the world, she'd make sure it knew exactly whose door to knock on first. What she builds in the week she's been given will change everything. For her, and for the family who never once looked back. If you enjoy immersive stories like this, consider subscribing. Now, let's begin. Ice covered the floor beneath her, and Vivian's eyes stayed open, fixed on the 3 people standing over her. Her mother held 2 basins of water she'd cracked from the frozen tank with her own hands, meant for washing her brother's feet, not for warming Vivian at all. Nobody looked at her. Nobody moved toward her. The cold had already gone past pain and into something else, something quiet. And the last thing she registered was how ordinary their faces looked while she died in front of them. She opened her eyes again in a body that wasn't dying. 7 days before the storm that would end the world as everyone knew it, her mother stood over her with an open palm, already talking about money. $16,000, she said, wasn't much to ask for a boy who'd worked himself half to death studying. He deserved a real vacation, and today was the day Vivian was going to pay for it. Vivian looked at the 3 people who had spent nearly half her life bleeding her dry, who in another version of this week had shoved her straight into the ground, and her hands went perfectly still in her lap, a cold settling over her that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. She almost laughed. This time she wasn't going to duck out of the way. If they wanted so badly to go up into the mountains, she would personally lay the road that got them there. Her brother lounged on the arm of the sofa, thumb scrolling his phone, backing their mother up like it was the most natural thing in the world. She made money easy, didn't she? So what was the holdup? Their father sat further off, silent, unbothered, the way he'd been unbothered his whole life about what his daughter was for. In that house, a daughter existed to fund the family and cushion the son, and everyone treated the arrangement like weather. In her old life, she would have emptied her own accounts just to keep the peace. But she'd already lived through what waiting on their approval cost her, and she didn't have a scrap of that old patience left. She smoothed the ice out of her expression and picked up the Frost Peak Resort brochure off the coffee table, sweet as anything. "Why rush?" she asked. Her brother had worked himself half to death for 8 months. He couldn't stay in some ordinary lodge. They should go all the way to the top suite, private butler, a schedule built just for him. All 3 of them lit up at once, the impatience on their faces sliding into satisfaction. Their faces told her they still thought she was the same soft thing they could squeeze whenever they liked. She pulled up the booking site and picked the most expensive package on the page, the price nearly tripling on the spot. Right as the payment screen loaded, she pressed a hand to her mouth, playing shocked. Her card was maxed, she said. She'd been covering the household for years, and maybe it was time everyone chipped in for this one trip, too. Their faces went gray, the sting of it plain, but the itinerary was already glowing gold and expensive on the screen, and none of them could stand to let it go. They scraped together every dollar between them and paid the rest. Inside, Vivian was laughing without a sound. $16,000 was only the down payment on what they owed her. She booked the flight for that same night, then herded them straight to the outdoor store under the pretext of buying gear for the trip. Breathable hiking shirts, sun hats, wide-brimmed visors, insect spray. She filled cart after cart with the lightest gear on the shelves, fussing the whole time that her brother would roast in anything heavier. She didn't touch the emergency rations, the water, the medical kits. They were only going up the mountain to escape the summer heat, after all. The real winter was already closing over the city. For 3 hours, she walked them through the aisles, carts piling up with lightweight new sweaters, everyday jackets, delicate accessories, every piece of it summer weight, none of it built to survive what was coming. Her mother eyed the mountain of clothes and started muttering about wasted money. Her brother, losing patience, told her to just grab a few things and be done with it. He had plans that night, and she was making him late. Vivian answered like she hadn't heard the edge in his voice, all wide-eyed sincerity. He barely got to go anywhere. He should dress properly and enjoy it. Take plenty of pictures of the scenery. The resort had food and drink covered. No need to haul anything extra. It would only get in the way. That settled it completely. In their eyes, she was still the same dazed girl who worshipped her brother and would give up anything for the family. Her father swiped his card for the whole bill on the way out, face dark with the total. The evening air outside was still warm, the city still baking in the last heat of the season, and not one person on the street knew a catastrophe big enough to freeze the whole world was quietly gathering itself. In the back seat, Vivian let the next trap drop like it was nothing. Hadn't they always wanted her to sign the standalone house over to her brother? The question landed, and all three heads turned at once, the greed in their eyes not even bothering to hide itself. The house on the south side had been hers for years now. Prime location, real value, the price they'd circled for 9 years, working her over with guilt trips and sob stories and syrupy affection to get her to hand it to her brother for his future wedding. She had never once given an inch. Her mother's face cracked into a delighted smile. Of course her girl finally understood. Her brother was about to start talking marriage, and no bride's family wanted to hear he had nowhere solid to live. Her brother chimed in just as pleased with himself, promising he'd take good care of his future wife once he was married. Vivian kept her voice easy. Adding a name to the deed was a hassle. All those fees. Why not just sell the house outright, put the money toward a bigger unit downtown, and put everyone's name on that one instead? The whole family under one roof, a proper home for the wedding. Her father's voice shook with excitement as he wheeled the car straight toward the reality office. Watching the three of them lean forward like dogs on a scent, Vivian felt the last thread of anything resembling family loyalty finally give way inside her. At the agency, she deliberately picked out a high-floor unit with an awkward layout, badly overpriced. The down payment brutal, and the monthly note worse. Blinded by the size of the rooms and the view, none of them could tell a good deal from a bad one. They drained every dollar of savings the family had, most of it money she'd earned, to lock down the deposit without a second thought. The moment the payment cleared, her father was already pushing the broker to list the standalone house fast. Rock bottom price. Whatever it took to move quickly. The listing went up within the hour. A place like that, priced to sell, wouldn't sit long. The whole family floated home, already picturing themselves moved into the new unit by the time the trip was over. Her brother married and settled. As far as she could tell, not one of them suspected they just walked straight into the trap she'd built for them. Back at the house, Vivian offered to pack the bags herself. Gentle and thorough, nothing anyone could falter for. She folded in the thin, short-sleeved shirts they just bought, the flimsy new outfits, the lightweight leather shoes. and left every scrap of cold weather gear, every ration, every bottle of water sitting untouched on the shelf. 3 suitcases, packed full of things that would mean nothing in a blizzard. Looking at the bags lined up by the door, she went quiet and cold inside, steady as she zipped the last one shut. Go on, she thought. Take your vanity and your greed with you and run it straight into the ice waiting for you. They reached the airport that night right on schedule. The terminal bright and crowded, everything humming with the last ordinary warmth before the world changed. It was the final glow before the catastrophe. Her mother came hurrying back from the counter a while later, boarding pass in hand, face arranged into careful distress. She'd only booked 3 seats, she said. She'd forgotten Vivian's entirely, and now the flight was full. No more seats to be had anywhere. What were they supposed to do now? Vivian watched the clumsy performance and almost wanted to laugh. It had always been like this. The second there was anything good on the table, her brother came first, every single time. She was always the one left standing at the gate. Her brother threw her an irritated glance and told her to just head home. He'd take her somewhere next time. She was making them late. Her father's frown deepened, his voice going sharp. It was nothing. No need to make a scene. Go home and behave. Same words as always. Same old favoritism dressed up different. But she wasn't the girl anymore who used to swallow it all just to feel like she belonged somewhere. Her face stayed calm. No anger, no tears, not even a flicker of the old hurt. "Have fun," she said simply, and turned and walked away without looking back. Behind her, the 3 of them stood frozen for a second, clearly thrown by how unbothered she'd sounded. Then the boarding call cut through the terminal and they didn't have time to think about it. They hurried through the gate and not one of them turned around. Vivian stood in the middle of the terminal listening to their footsteps fade, her shoulders loosening for the first time in years. From this moment on, she had no family left, only herself. She called the broker she'd already lined up, a man named Ellison who handled the property out past the edge of town. The house at Ashwood Hollow had a stone well and walls built solid enough to hold against wind and cold. Could the paperwork close tonight? Cash in full? He came back thrilled. The seller needed to leave town fast and would cut the price further for a same-night close, and he could hand over the keys within the hour. She had him send the PIN and told him she was already on her way. She emptied every account in her name, and inside 3 hours, the deed was hers, clean and done. This time around, she wasn't wasting a single second. She opened a lending app and pulled an $80,000 loan against her name. Once the disaster hit, the banks would go dark along with everything else, and every lender in the country would be shuttered inside a week. The money was a gift from the coming chaos, and nobody was ever going to come collect it. The second it landed, she called the best contractor in the business, a man named Nolan Hayes, and read him off the address. Every exterior wall needed insulation and a storm shell. The windows and doors swapped for reinforced steel core units. The basement sealed and converted into a proper shelter room holding steady around 65 degrees. Storage, sleeping quarters, supply room, best materials available, crews working straight through the night. 4 days to finish, triple pay. Hayes promised it would be done on time, told her he'd built her the safest place left standing. She hung up and went straight to an online supplier, ordering more than 150 high-output solar panels, 40 battery banks, 5 backup generators, enough to run the whole house on its own grid. Whatever happened to the city's power lines, she'd have light and heat regardless. The crew worked through the dark, machinery running without pause, the lights never going out. Watching the trucks pull in one after another, she let herself feel, for just a moment, how far she'd come from the girl who used to hand over her paycheck without asking why. Then it was heating units, space heaters, electric blankets, power banks by the 100, chest freezers, refrigerators. She cleared out whole warehouses of them online, all same-day delivery within the city. Once the deep freeze hit, blackouts would be routine, and the cold itself would turn every freezer and fridge into a natural vault, food kept fresh for years if it needed to be. Supplies rolled in for 3 straight days, filling the house and the basement floor to ceiling. 36 hours out from the disaster, the weather outside started twisting into something wrong. What should have been a brutal summer heat dropped off a cliff instead. Wind screaming without letting up, black cloud pressing the sky down flat and dark. The emergency broadcasts came in red alert warnings, the announcer's voice tight and urgent, telling everyone to stay inside and prepare. Most people wrote it off as an ugly cold snap and went about their evenings like nothing was wrong.
The temperature finished its collapse. Her phone buzzed hard against the counter, her mother's name lighting the screen. She picked up without much interest. Her mother's voice came through sharp and furious. The temperature up the mountain had cratered out of nowhere. The wind wouldn't stop. The resort had lost heat and water both. And where exactly was Vivian? And when was she getting up there? Vivian felt nothing shift in her at all. In her old life, that shaking, wounded voice would have had her running into the mountains within the hour, stripping herself of everything to save them, ending up frozen for her trouble. Now there was only a flat, cold amusement. Her voice came out even and distant. Frost Peak was a heat retreat. A little cold up there was normal. If it got bad, they had guides. They had a hotline. What did they need her for? Her mother's breath caught, temper spiking instantly. Playing hard to get, was she, turning her back on her own family. Vivian should transfer $70,000 up there right now, her mother snapped. Or when they got home, the whole family was done with her. No daughter left to claim. Done with her? Vivian nearly laughed out loud. It was exactly the outcome she'd been hoping for. "Fine then," she said, and hung up before another word could land, blocking every one of them in the same breath. The noise of that tangled, dangerous thing called family finally went quiet. Outside, the wind kept climbing, a high, ugly shriek, branches snapping under the weight of it, snow tearing sideways through the dark. The temperature had already fallen to 62 below, and ordinary clothing stood no chance against it. 8 minutes outside was enough to freeze a person stiff. Her phone lit up again. Her father's voice tore through the line, hoarse with fury. Had she stripped the whole house bare, sold off everything? Where the hell was she hiding? Why wouldn't she answer? They'd fought their way back into the city ahead of the worst of it. She pulled up the house cameras. In the empty living room, her mother, father, and brother stood shivering, miserable, the place stripped down to nothing. Her mother wouldn't let it go, muttering that she'd always known the girl had ice for a heart, that she'd emptied the house out of pure spite. Her father's face had gone dark and dangerous, his voice flat. Every call, every single one, straight to voicemail. His temper finally snapped past holding. He pulled up an app on his phone, and a bright red dot marked her exact location on the screen. Vivian's stomach dropped. He'd been tracking her phone for who knew how long, watching every move she made. Her father stared at the screen, mouth twisting into something cold and mean. Not answering, was she? Hiding from him, was she? He'd see how long that lasted. He told her to wait right where she was. He was coming to bring her home. She'd checked the time. 5 hours left before the world hit 86 below and the disaster went total. She dialed the unknown number back. It connected, and her father's raging voice was already there waiting. She'd finally worked up the nerve to answer, had she? He'd find her soon enough. Let's see where she thought she was running to now. 4 hours later, a car buried in ice ground to a stop outside the standalone house by the river. 3 figures inside, frozen half-stiff, pounding on the gate to be let in. Vivian sat on the sofa and spoke through the camera mic, her voice gone deliberately soft. "No rush," she said. "The door was jammed. The code was her birthday. They all knew it." The 3 of them outside went still for a second, then their eyes lit with relief, punching in the number they knew by heart. The gate swung open, they stormed in, ready to shout her down, and stopped dead in the doorway instead. The living room stood completely empty, nothing in it but an old phone lying alone on the floor. Her voice came through clear and cold and almost pleasant. "Welcome to real winter." The digital thermostat on the wall spun downward fast. 50 below. 65. 72. 78. The self-locking mechanism on the front door had already been engaged from the inside. Pole's Bear poured through the gaps, the number still falling. 86 below. Her mother broke first, begging into the empty room, her voice cracking. "Please, sweetheart, just a little heat. Just let them in for a little warmth." Her brother's voice came out sharper, ugly. Was she really going to keep them locked in here to freeze? Once he got out, he wasn't going to let this go. How dare she turn her back on the people who raised her? Was this how she paid them back? Open the door, or family or not, he'd make sure she regretted it. Debts, was it? Vivian's voice stayed level. They'd raised her once and spent the next 20 years bleeding her for it, funding the house, funding her brother's education, funding the whole family's comfort. Whatever she'd owed them, she'd paid back in full a long time ago, principal and interest both. All 3 faces went white. She let the silence sit a moment before she spoke again. They'd play a little game. Name 2 things they'd each taken from her that they'd never paid back, and she'd give them 15 minutes of heat to enjoy it. Her mother went first, the words spilling out in a rush. "The ticket, I did that on purpose," she said. "I didn't want you along, enjoying anything for yourself. There was only ever your brother in my heart. I never loved you the same. I was unfair, and I'm sorry." Vivian flipped the remote switch. An old dust-covered space heater in the corner clicked on. The 3 of them scrambled toward it at once, fighting for what little warmth it gave. 15 minutes burned down fast, and the heater cut out. Her brother begged for more time. "I can't take much more of this cold," he said. "Fine. I never once thought twice about spending your money. I leaned on you for everything and called it normal. I'm sorry. Just let us go." "There's a lockbox behind the cabinet," she told them. "Food and water inside. Whatever else they got past that point was down to them." Her brother lunged for it, dragging the box out and finding it sealed tight, no code in sight. He demanded she give it to them. She told him the code only went to 1 person. The 3 of them, already halfway to breaking, clinging to each other one moment, flinched apart from each other the next. Father and son eyed one another with open suspicion. Her mother suddenly clutched her stomach, crying out in pain. "Stop fighting. She might be pregnant again. This was their family's line. They couldn't afford to lose it." Her father's hostility dropped away in an instant. He turned straight to the camera. "Daughter," he said, "for your brother's sake, for your sister's, spare them this once. The family line can't end here. I'll stand out in the cold myself if it spares your mother and brother." Vivian couldn't help a low laugh, cold and disbelieving. 86 below and barely holding on themselves, and all he could think about was the next generation. They'd never once felt real guilt over what they'd done to her. That old habit of favoring one child over the other had cut too deep to ever really change, even now, even here. Her father turned and headed for the second-floor balcony, leaving her mother shaking and her brother frozen in place downstairs. Her mother's whole body had gone rigid, her eyes hollowed out with desperation. "Please," she begged, "just tell me. I want to live." "The code is your brother's birthday," Vivian said. Her mother's hands shook as she punched in the numbers she knew by heart. Inside the box sat a few bottles of water, some ration bars, and 9 years of transfer records and screenshots. Every dollar Vivian had ever sent them, laid out in black and white, proof of exactly how they'd bled her. Her mother broke completely, sobbing until her voice went ragged, drowning in regret that had come far too late. Her brother stared at the records, shaking, the old careless arrogance gone from his face entirely. He finally understood what his easy, comfortable life had actually been built on. For the next 20 hours, Vivian watched them through the cameras in silence, suspicion, blame, resentment circling between the two of them. Her brother accused their mother of blind favoritism that had ruined everyone. Her mother accused him of laziness and pettiness that had dragged the whole family down. Whatever piece the family had ever worn in public came apart completely once real danger showed up. Her mother went first. She'd always been frail, and with her strength gone, she slipped quietly into stillness somewhere between the cold and the regret that never stopped coming. When she went still, whatever hope they'd been clinging to went with her. Her brother lasted alone in the freezing room a while longer, running on nothing but the will to keep going, holding out almost 2 full days before the cold finally won. His body went still too. Vivian shut off the cameras and didn't look at the silent, frozen room again. The storm kept tearing through the city, the whole place locked down, the networks flickering in and out, order breaking down completely. A city that had been warm and ordinary only days before had turned into a wasteland of ice. In the 6th year of the Great Freeze, Vivian climbed up to the roof as she did most mornings, clearing snow off the solar panels. The wind cut at her face, but it didn't carry that same crushing weight it once had. She realized, almost without meaning to, that the 6-year cold had begun quietly loosening its grip. The heavy snow that had blotted out the sky for so long was thinning, and a pale strip of blue was showing through for the first time in longer than she could remember. The storm that had lasted 6 unbroken years finally came to an end. Winter closed itself out, and Vivian stayed where she was, alone, waiting for the quiet, frozen world outside to slowly come back to life.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing for more. We'll see you next time. See ya!